Hi guys, I wanted to come to you today because I'm not in class and I wanted to make sure that you understood what Criterion D was all about. So let's just look at the design process. To start, Criterion A was really where you guys went through and created that foundation. And the big major two pieces of Criterion A was all of that research that you did in finding the answers to all of those questions we came up with and creating those design specifications, which a lot were given to us, but we needed to make sure that we had every angle kind of covered. Okay, so we went through and we designed all of those design specifications, which there were plenty, and there were a lot that you guys were very able to see. They were plainly put out on the design brief for you, like it has to pop a balloon, it has to last 60 seconds, it needs to be safe for kids, it has to have 6 to 8 parts. You can only use the materials that are listed and obviously those size constraints, but there were ones that we didn't talk about or that weren't listed out for us. And some of those were the fact that it had to be easy to set up, we couldn't touch it once it had started, and that it had to attract the attention and keep the attention of 4 to 7-year-olds. And we were able to answer a lot of that information in the research section. Once we were done with that, we went to Criterion B, which was conceptual design. And in that section, we designed all kinds of different sketches. We designed 12 different individual parts when we started in the development of ideas. Then we redesigned and refined those ideas to conceptual modeling, which was us going through and really detailing every specific piece and how it was going to work, trying to make those ideas a little bit more solidified. Then we went to B3, which was the development of a solution, and we created that decision matrix with our partners. And once you guys did that, you probably realized that some ideas weren't going to work. And you probably realized that even between the development of ideas, those brainstorming sketches, and the refining, you may have even realized that some of them don't work right, in that step. So once you got to B3, it was probably a little bit easier to understand that some of our sketches didn't work and some of them did. Then from there, we went into Criterion C, and Criterion C was all about the spec sheets, and we were able to explain why we wanted the materials that we wanted, how we were going to build them, and with what machines, and then we detailed what we learned from building. Now, some of you didn't do that in C4, and you lost some major points, because all you did was told me that you built that day. Well, obviously you built that day, that's what we were supposed to do, but what you needed to detail there was all of the documentation as to what happened, how it went, and what you learned from those steps. Then we actually built. Building in the Rube Goldberg machine is a lot more important than almost anything else because you guys have never built before. So even though you have these great ideas in Criterion A, B, and C, once you start building, you might realize that some of those are never going to work. And you had to ad-lib a little bit, which many of you did. And that's okay. That's expected. So now we've gone through the analysis of a design opportunity in that foundation base part, and then we went into some of our brainstorming ideas. You guys came up with some ideas as far as inclined planes and pulleys and all of that stuff. And then we went into the development of a detailed design process. And in that section, we were really able to solidify some ideas, even if they didn't eventually get built. Now we're going into testing and evaluation. You guys have already tested, and if you notice, nowhere in here does it say your machine must work. And I know I've talked about that before, but some of you are still stuck on it, and I want to make sure you understand that if your machine doesn't work, that just gives you more things to talk about in this section. So in D, what you're going to do is you are going to have D1, which is the evaluation against marketing specs. Now, when we talked about marketing specs, we had two different groups of people. We had the target market and we had the target audience. Now, the difference between the two is that one group is spending the money and the other group is using the product. The target market were the group of people that were going to be spending the money. They were the ones, the parents, that were going to be putting out the money for the tickets in order to go to the Please Touch Museum. The target audience were the kids, ages 4 to 7, that we needed to keep their attention. So the first question you're going to ask in Criterion D1 is, did I meet those marketing specs? So, did you have a product that the parents would want to bring their kids to? Most of you are already saying no, and that's totally understandable. Maybe it wasn't pretty enough, or because it didn't work, or because it wasn't safe, whatever it might be. But either way, you need to explain why the parents didn't want to come and see your exhibit. The second part, in part D1, is did you create an exhibit that would be attractive to children ages 4 to 7? Again, you might be saying no, and that's okay, but you need to explain why or why not. Did you create a product that kids would be attracted to? And if so, why was it so attractive to them? If not, what could you have done or how would you have changed it to make it better? Maybe you didn't paint it. Maybe you didn't have time. Maybe you didn't have a theme. Either way, you have to come up with an idea as to how you would have increased that attention for that target audience. Now we go on to D2. D2 is going to be set up as a table. In the left-hand column, you are going to have all of those design specifications. Some of them are pop a balloon, 60 seconds or longer, it must be safe for children, 6 to 8 parts, it had to be easy to set up, you couldn't touch it after it had started working, you had to use only the materials allowed in the class, the size constraint of 24 inches by 24 inches by 36 inches, and it had to attract and keep the attention of 4 to 7-year-olds. So in the left-hand column, you're going to have all of those listed out. The middle column is going to be where you tell me whether or not your machine met that design spec. Did it pop the balloon on its own? Probably not. So what you're going to put in that middle section is, no, it did not pop the balloon by itself. Now, you're not done there because that's just the what. Remember, I'm always asking you why. So the third column is going to be why or why not. So again, for D2, you're going to have a table that has 3 columns. The left-hand column is going to have all of the design specifications, the ones that we had just listed. The middle column is going to ask the question, did it meet that design specification? And the last question is going to be why or why not. Make sure you're answering that why question. That's a huge part of this process. If you can't answer that question, then it was a waste of your marking period. Now we move on to D3. D3 explains how the solution can be improved. Now remember, we started with a different type of problem. Our problem was originally we need to create an exhibit for the Please Touch Museum. And we did that. We went through the 3 different steps or the 3 different criterion, we created it, and then we tested it. Now our problem is, well, it didn't work. So we need to figure out and explain how we would include or how we would improve that solution. How are you going to change your machine? You may have told me in the design specs why it didn't work, but you haven't told me how you're going to fix it. And again, don't just tell me, well, we're going to build inclined planes differently, or we're going to build faster. That's just what. You need to explain how and why that's going to be important for you to do. Remember, the last section is quite possibly the most important section because this is you now evaluating your project against all of these pieces that we've already done. If you can't explain why it didn't work or how you're going to fix it, then you definitely missed the point of the process. So please make sure that you're answering the why question, read it over multiple times, and have a very clear understanding as to why you need to fix your project. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will assure you that we can definitely get this taken care of. Good luck!